Good morning everyone and welcome to another podcast. It's been a little while since I've been out, a few things going on this year and really busy getting all the flies ready in the shop for this season, so my apologies if this one's a little delayed. Bit of a change today. I've actually come out to Barlow Trout Fishery, which is some small trout ponds. There's 3 of them, and we are into the trout season on the rivers already, but the rivers are very, very swollen at the minute, very brown, and I was toying with the idea maybe of going out and swinging some big wet flies or check nymphing on the river, but because lots of the podcasts I do on the river, I thought for a bit of a change I'd actually come and fish a small Stillwater for some stock rainbows. It's a beautiful fishery and it's a stunning morning. The storm's now behind us and we've got a lovely spring morning. Just walking down the track now towards the fishery. It's a beautiful wooded valley. There's a nice brook running through the middle and lots of trees on both sides, and then there's a series of ponds. There's 8 ponds in total, I think, fed by the brook at the top, and then gravity takes the water down through each pond and then back into the brook at the bottom of the fishery. Lots of wild garlic here next to the river as I walk down, plenty of birds singing. Noticed a bit of a dawn chorus this morning, so I think spring is well and truly on the way. Just going to head across a little wooden footbridge and I'll take a look at the trout ponds and see what's happening. There's 3 trout pools here that we can fish. Mainly stock rainbows. It's well stocked and regularly stocked as well. And then there's also some coarse fishing lakes down towards the bottom of the valley. So I'm just coming up to the first couple of trout ponds now. Just have a quick look. It's quite still actually. I was hoping for a bit of a ripple this morning, but can't have everything. I see a few fish rising already. I'm hoping today, if possible, to have a go at fishing on the surface. I would have thought there'd be a reasonable hatch of midges today, and there is a bit of sunshine, but I think we'll still get some fish rising. All the vegetation, the reeds are all still died back, but I can just see a few green shoots starting to emerge from the rushes and reeds by the side of the water. Just walking past the first couple of lakes here. River's on my right now, just flowing down the valley, and there's a pheasant calling up in the woods. Lovely temperature as well. It's a perfect early spring morning. I'm just coming down the track now to the 3rd pond. I can see fish rising there, so I think we'll start in there. Just have a quick look about and see if I can see anything particular, but I would have thought it would be emerging midges today. The reason I know that really is I know the lakes very well because I do a lot of coaching here, and the time of year as well, there's not really going to be a great deal else hatching. I can see lots of midges in the air, and I would have thought that's the way to go this morning. I'm just walking up the grass now to the 3rd pond, and we'll have a little cast in here, see how we get on. Yeah, I can see some fish on the top, just picking off some midges. I've tied on a little black emerging buzzer, so the bottom of the buzzer will just sit under the surface film, and then there's a little foam head on which will just sit it just in the surface film, so it looks like a hatching midge. I think we'll start with that one and see how we get on. Right, put the old net down. I've got my what have I got here? 9'6", 7 weight forward line, about 9 feet of 6-pound nylon, and the emerging buzzer on the end. It's probably a little heavy. If I do want to, I can whack a really long cast out into the middle if needs be with this outfit. Let's just get a bit of line. I'll start fairly close in and we'll see how things progress from there. It's a little bit stiller than I thought. It is a fairly sheltered valley, so we don't really get much wind in here, which is great for on those windy days when you want to just get out of the wind, but equally you don't get that gentle breeze that gives a nice ripple, so I always like a bit of a ripple, especially if I'm fishing on the surface, and it does look very still. Plenty of midges hatching though. As a fish just swirled. My leader's not particularly helpful. It is sat on the surface. I might just have to degrease the last 12 or 15 inches of leader just to sink that, just for a bit of a better presentation. And the sun's coming out now as well, which I didn't want. Right, I think I'll just bring this one in and just degrease that last little bit of leader. And we are getting unbelievably some bright sunshine now, which is going to just make things a touch harder. There is a bit of cloud in the sky, so we may be blessed with a bit more overcast weather conditions later. Alright, degreaser, here we go. Yeah, so as the sun's hit the water, I can already see that the number of rising fish has decreased dramatically. So the degrease is on, and the emerging buzzer's out there again. I'm only casting about 15-20 feet, and I can just see the little white piece of foam just sat above the surface film, and then the nice black buzzer hanging beneath it. And I think the best tactic today is just leave it out there, and hopefully we'll get a rainbow come and have a look. Maybe move around a bit as well and try and find some fish, some feeding fish to cast to. Just hoping this sun doesn't come out too much more. So it's a day ticket fishery here. Anyone can come and fish. Just turn up and fish. Buy your ticket on the bank. I use it a lot for coaching out here, actually, especially for beginners courses, because the casting's nice and easy. You know, the grass banks are nice and flat, so it's easy to put a cast out for beginners. And because the trout pools are only small, you know, half an acre to an acre, it's just a bit less intimidating, especially for people who've never done it before, compared to going out to 500 acres of reservoir. At this rate, we're going to have to swap to a wet fly quite quickly, because the sun's really hitting the water now. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll know that most of my fly fishing podcasts actually take place on the river. In fact, the only stillwater fishing I really do now with a fly is for pike and perch and zander and things like that. I many years ago used to do a lot more reservoir trout fishing, but I really do enjoy my river fishing and fishing for wild fish. In fact, I'm up on the River Dee next week on Dee side. I've got a week of salmon fishing up there, so the plan is to record a podcast salmon fishing next week, which will be out in April. Right, I think I'm going to wind this one in, and I can see a few fish rising in the corner there, so I may just have a walk across and try and put one over them. The problem is with this kind of fishing, when you're just seeing the odd one or two fish rising, is you go across to the corner and put a cast in, and then they end up rising where you've just come from. You know, you just chase fish about, so sometimes it can be more productive just to stay in one spot. Right, I've cast out again. I've just disturbed a carp that's just basking here by the bank, and that's created a big bow wave as it scoots off. Nothing major hatching, like I said today, it's just midges. I think the next fly we'll probably see here is the alder fly, which tends to hatch early to mid-spring time. And then once the alder flies hatch, we'll be into the full complement of pond olives and caddis through the spring and summer. Fish as well, these little ponds, there's plenty of natural food here for the fish, so I find that fishing natural patterns is productive here as opposed to lures, and fish is great on the surface as well, and they do like to come up and take a fly here. And you'll get them rising even on cold winter days as well. Here they'll come up. In fact, I've caught fish here on a dry, just on the edge of sheets of ice. Just off the sheets of ice. Just put a dry out and had fish come up and take. So it does hold its fish well. Unfortunately, it's looking very, very still and bright, and just what I don't like. I much prefer fishing when it's rainy and windy and grey. Much better fishing weather. Right, I think I'll try a few longer casts now and just try and drop one out a bit further. I'll give it maybe another 15-20 minutes fishing on the surface like this, and then I think we'll have to drop a little dial back or a buzzer or something on and just let that get down a bit. A couple of other anglers out fishing today as well. Now the leader's sinking a lot nicer now. I've put that degreaser on anyway. I can see I've got about maybe 7 feet of nylon that's floating, and then the last 2 or 3 feet now are nice, and they're sunk nicely beneath the surface film. So it's just the buzzer that's visible. I don't like it when you've got that crease of leader on the water. I always think it potentially is going to put fish off. And I know they are popular places, these little fisheries. They do get plenty of anglers coming through the doors. It's nice to see people out fishing wherever it is, whether it be river, lake or whatever, really. Right, I think we might have another move. I'm just going to have to keep moving until I can maybe find a fish that's going to be a bit happier. So I've put one out in the corner, and this is going to just drift in towards some of the rushes, and I've seen a fish or two rising in this corner here. Quite often on these little Stillwaters we'll get a pocket of fish in the corner if the prevailing wind's been blowing in that direction for a day or two, because we do get a fair amount of natural food on here, as I mentioned, so it will blow it into the corners, and you can get pods of fish that will just obviously lock onto that food in the corners and feed on it. So they are productive places. Looking down the valley now, the trees on both sides are still bare. Not really any green on them apart from the ivy growing up the trunks, and everything's still looking fairly wintry, but the air does feel spring-like now. Nice temperature, and you can feel that little spring-like buzz in the air as nature starts to take advantage of the food and get ready for mating and spawning and nest building and all those things. Birds are really busy in the trees. You can hear them twittering away. And the sunlight coming down the valley, I can just see columns of midges hovering, and there's the odd fish rising still in this little pool, but it's not what I'd call a rise really. It's a fish every 2 or 3 minutes is just coming up and sipping something. There's even a chance actually that some of these rises will be carp. There are a few carp in here that have lived in here for years and years, and you'll see them once the weather starts to warm up. They'll be basking and feeding and swirling on the surface. So, especially in the summertime, a lot of the surface activity here is carp and not trout. In fact, I can see a carp now that's just its big shadow just cruising down the reeds. I think I'll wind in and just head on up, maybe just have a look at the little pond above this one, because there was a few fish rising in there, and just see if they're a little bit more agreeable. Sometimes in here you'll get one pond where there's fish rising and one where they're not. Just grab the old net and we'll go and have a little look up here and see if there's anything worth fishing for. The beauty of these little fisheries is you can walk round and cover some ground, and plenty of damselflies here as well. And once we get into the warm days of late spring and early summer, damsels are all over the rushes mating, and obviously the nymphs swimming to the rushes to hatch out and crawl out when they hatch, and you get lots of fish in the margins that just intercept them. There's a nice hatch of pond olives on here as well, and one of the best days we've ever had here, when I was coaching actually, was 25th of April when the hawthorns hatched. And it's amazing how those hawthorns hatch almost like clockwork on the 25th of April. Sometimes they're a day or two before, sometimes a day or two after, but several years I've had the main hatch has been on the 25th, and you'll get swarms of them coming off the surrounding vegetation here and landing on the water, and the fish go absolutely nuts for them. And provided you've got a couple of hawthorn imitations in your box, you can have some cracking days here. And we had one day when I got a beginner's course out here, and I got 4 beginners, never fished before, and they had over 20 fish between them, just fishing dry hawthorns in amongst the rising fish. And some of the more regular anglers who'd not really cottoned onto the hatch or just were pulling lures and things were looking at us, wondering what on earth we were using. I think they thought we'd put maggots on or something. Well, there's plenty of ducks on here, but I can't really see much in the way of fish at the minute. Another big carp here, just patrolling the margins. Nice big common carp. There's a trout, just showed its fin. I'm going to have a little cast off this bit here. So this bit I'm sandwiched in between 2 ponds. I've got a pond in front and a pond behind. There's a little walkway that goes down there that splits them in 2. And I can just walk down here and I can cast into one, or if I spin round I can cast into the other. I'll just find a spot on the bank here in between these rushes that are all brown and died down and easy to cast through. Different story in the summer when they're tall and green and you've got to find a little opening in the fringe to get your cast out. But they're excellent habitat for fly life, and also provide some cover for the angler as well. I put a short cast out just of 15-20 feet, and we'll see if anything comes and has a look at it. There's a trout come right out there in the middle, as they do. Oh, and again. There is a few more rising in here actually, which is good. Let's try and just cover a few of these fish if we can. There's one coming to have a look. Oh, he's had a look and he's just turned away at the last sec. And he's got him. There we go. Oh, he's off. I just twitched it to put a little bit of movement in. He came and looked at it and turned away, and I just twitched it. And he grabbed it as I was moving the fly. And I struck into him, and he was on for about a second or two, and then he was off. That's good news. At least we've had a take. Definitely a bit more activity in this other pond. There's a big swirl there. I think that's probably from a carp. Wouldn't mind catching that. I can actually see several fish feeding here now. Some are rising and some I can just see the flash of the flanks as they're tilting to take what I presume will be midge pupa just under the surface. It's nice to find a few rising fish. Let's get another cast out. I'm just having to cast a little longer now. The fish seem to be concentrated a little bit further out. Wood pigeons are busy in the trees. Right, I can see lots of fish moving now, just very close into one of the other banks, and I think what I'm going to do is just creep round and put some short casts in to cover them. It's just a case of being not too close to them as to spook them. So when they're close in like this, if you pile up close to the bank, what I'm going to do is actually just cast at an angle and lay the line across some of the dead rushes and just drop my fly over the edge of them. Oh, very close. He's coming to have a look. He's had a look. Put a little bit of movement in. Oh, he's had a look and turned. That's the problem, you see, when it's so still like this. When it's so still, you can get them. Just come and look at that fly, and another one's turned at the last second. So just come and look at it, and then just at the last second back out. That's 3 or 4 little views I've had of that one just in this area here. So that's why I put a bit of movement in sometimes, just to try and induce that take. I missed it. Again, just moving the fly. They just can't resist it sometimes, even if they're not 100% confident. That movement just triggers that feeding response and they make a grab. Well, that's nice. I've only been here 15 minutes or so and I've had one, and I've had 3 or 4 bits of interest in my fly. And these fish have just pushed out now. I've just pushed them away. Right, I think it may be buzzer time. I have another 5 minutes with this, and I think I might pop on a buzzer just to get subsurface a touch. I'm going to try a few longer casts. I'm just wondering if a buzzer on a figure of 8 retrieve might be a little better. They're not uber confident in rising. Either that or maybe a double badger or something like that might be the way to go. Let's have a look in the old fly box, see what we can do. Well, after some deliberation, I've gone onto a little dial back size, what's that, 14. I toyed about putting a dry on, but I just think that maybe they're wanting a little bit of movement today, so we'll try with the dial back and just twitch that nice figure of 8, slowish retrieve just under the surface, and see if that gets a take or two. And if that starts getting a take or two, then I know we're in the right zone. I just noted it's just so still at the minute that the takes I've had really have been when I've twitch the emerging buzzer. Sorry, so I'm just wondering if actually a moving fly just under the surface may be better. Let's have a go. Putting a longish cast out and then figure of 8. Just twitching the dowelback back. Dowelback's a great fly. Does a fair imitation of a midge pupa and a reasonable imitation of all sorts of other creatures and insects that will be down there. So it's a good all-round searching fly for Stillwaters, and I've had great success on it over the years. And if this doesn't work, oh, missed it. Had it on. I was saying, if it doesn't work, and had a fish take and then it was off again, almost like they're not quite fully committing at the minute. They're not 100% committing to the fly. That's 2 on now. Let's check my fly's okay. Looks fine. Oh. He's come up and had a look at it and just dived off again at the last sec. I reckon if we'd have got a nice breeze and ripple on the water, I would have had 4 or 5 fish by now. It's just as it's so still, they're just that little bit wary. They can see my line and probably my leader. Just gives them a bit of extra clarity to see what's going on with the fly as well, and they're not fully convinced. Oh, another take. Just a pluck and not fully committing. They're definitely interested in the moving fly though, that's for sure. So I think it's only a matter of time before one has a rush of blood to the head and just fully commits. I can see them coming up and flashing at the fly and turning, and exciting stuff. There we go. Oh, that's 3 I've had on now. What they're doing is they're sat obviously down deep, as trout will be, near the bottom, and then they're rising up and ambushing, and they're rising up to the fly and flashing at it, and then they're just not fully committing. It's what you'll hear some people often say on the river. It happens early in the year. We often hear people refer to it as them taking short, and I've definitely experienced it. Not quite 100% just committing, and you get nips and you see risers and bits of interest. And it's funny because where I fish on the where I do my coaching and instruction on the River Derwent, so I've got a beat of river out there, and I speak to some of the other anglers and a few of the river keepers on that up and down from me, and we'll often all say the same thing, that their fish have been taking short and not quite connecting. Just check this fly, still looking okay. Just got the leader wrapped around it a bit there. I wonder if that's fish is taking it. That's not going to swim properly, so I'm just going to nip that on and retie it, I think. They seem to be quite close in actually, just almost on the fringes of the weed. Can you just imagine the fish down there waiting for... Oh, come on, take it. It's almost every retrieve back I can see something following, and another one flashed at it. Try slowing it down or speeding it up, varying it. Just need them to commit. I'll try dropping the fly down a little deeper and just letting that fly get down to the fish a bit more, and just see if they'll be a bit more confident taking it down in their lair. Sun's going in a bit now, that might help. Well, I wonder if I've maybe pushed them out of this corner a little bit. I think what I'm going to do is extend this leader a touch. I've got a little spool of nylon in my pocket here, so I'm just going to make my leader 3 or 4 foot longer and just see if that helps. So just use a 3-turn water knot and put another length of tippet on. And it also just gives the water in front of me a bit of a break from my casting as well. And just hopefully a few of these fish will come back and feed. So I went out to Lady Bower yesterday and just brushed up on my spey casting for next week. I've got a new line I wanted to have a test, and I've gone for one of the Rio Scandies, and I have to say it was on the advice of a friend who's a very, very good salmon angler, and I was very impressed with the line. It was superb. Totally different experience of casting, and I was casting a heavy sink tip with a big 1-inch copper tube, and it had absolutely no trouble. So I'm excited about using that next week. It should be a lot of fun casting with that. Sometimes those big 1-inch copper tubes and heavy sink tips, they're just a bit of a pain to lift when you're spey casting, but I had no trouble on the reservoir yesterday, and it's easier in the river as well because obviously the current is pushing your fly up, so you've not got as far to lift it out of the water. So conditions are looking reasonable, and there's been a few fish caught this year, so hoping we might at least see a few fish topping and tailing in the river next week. But I will be doing a salmon fishing podcast from there, probably on day 3 after I've just settled in a bit. I look forward to recording that and get that published April time. In the meantime, I'm fully tied back on. I put a long leader on now just to see if that helps with the presentation and just keep the fly away from the fly line a bit. And we'll see if that encourages a fish or two to have a go at the fly. A bit of a hazy sunshine now coming down the valley. The grass is looking very green. Oh, I just had a swirl at it again there. So the grass is looking lovely and green. It banks up towards the woods at the sides of the valley. And I can just see the odd yellow buttercup dotted around as well. A couple of nice hawthorn trees, and then a nice mature woodland just on the top of the banking. It's a very pretty little valley, this. There's the brook that I mentioned that runs through the fishery. You can actually fish that as well. There's some wild brownies in there. And there used to be the odd escapee rainbow as well when the hatchery in the fish farm was a bit more active. But I haven't fished the brook for a while actually, so I don't quite know what's going on there. But I certainly see when I come here to do the coaching, I can always see them rising in the pools. It's lovely fishing up there. You need waders and probably only want at the most a 7-foot rod. I might go down the route of putting a small dry on. I'm thinking I'll have another 5 minutes on this, and then I think we'll put a little Griffiths gnat on and just sit that and see if they come and take that. There's a couple of carp just feeding in front of me. In fact, I've caught plenty of these carp on dialbacks here over the years when I've been fishing for trout. Especially just as you really get into spring, those smaller carp really seem to become active and they'll chase and take your nymph. Okay, we'll make this last cast, I think, and then we'll swap over to a Griffiths gnat. And with that, all I'm going to do is just sit it on the surface and leave it. Ah, yeah, another one swirled at it there and didn't take it. Let's put the Griffiths gnat on and see if we need to go a little bit smaller and just sit it on. It's only going to be a short trip today. I've not got much time to get this done. It's been such a busy start to the year with the fly shop. Right, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to degrease the last 12 inches of leader, and then I'm going to add a tiny bit of gink to it. Not too much, just the smallest amount. Just rub it in, just on my little finger, just to give it a little bit of protection. Right, so Griffith's Nat is on, and I'm going to drop this in and just let it sit, and we'll see if anything. Bit of breeze just getting up now, which is nice, and the breeze is just moving my dry about on the surface, which is just what I want, just so it looks like a natural fly, just skittering about slightly. And all I'm going to do with this is just slowly gather the line as it naturally starts to kink on the surface. I'm just going to let the fly sit for 2 or 3 minutes and then recast. One of my favourite flies, the Griffith's Nat. Whether it be reservoir, river, very, very, very successful. And they float nice as well, so you can even fish them in the in slightly more turbulent water, and they do sit nicely. There's some frogs moving about as well. They'll be getting ready for spawning. 2 other anglers fishing on the lake, and neither have had a fish. Right, I think we'll represent this now. Just lift up a couple of casts to dry it out and then drop it back in. Just straighten the leader, make sure everything's nice and tight, so if we do strike we're going to set the hook properly. Lovely and peaceful in this valley. Just a splosh of trout and bird song. A few aeroplanes in the overhead, but that's it really. The odd dog walker walking up the valley. These fish have gone down a bit now. They're certainly not up on top as much as they were. I may have missed that golden hour of feeding, hooking up and losing those few fish in that short space of time earlier. They've just dropped off now, and the sun's getting higher in the sky, and it's just starting to penetrate a bit. I can't put too much of a long cast out here because I've got some trees behind me, so I'm just limited a little bit. Kind of behind the rushes and trees behind as well. Yeah, there's definitely dropped off the rising now as the sun's come right up above us. Right, a few more minutes on this dry. I'm going to have to chop and change again, I think, and put a wet back on. Yeah, it's all I can see moving now are carp and frogs. So the bright sun has definitely pushed these trout down. I think I'm going to put the dowel back on, move position, and put a really long cast out and just twitch it back through a good length of water. See if we can get a take doing that. Because they've definitely gone off the boil on the surface. I can't see much cloud that's going to come and cover the sun, so it's all going a bit horrible and bright. I thought it was going to be nice and overcast today. There you go. I'm looking forward to getting back on the rivers and chasing a few trout actually. I've been out a lot on the grayling over winter. Fished quite heavily, and I'm not ever going to say that I'm sick of catching grayling, but I will be nice to start getting a few nice brownies. But give it a few weeks until the levels will settle a touch. Right, we are changed back to a dial back. Let me shift position, and this is why I bring a 7 weight. Is now I'm thinking I can push a really big cast out and just cover some water. Well, this isn't looking good at all now. It's very, very still, very, very bright, and it's very warm. And it's really put the fishing off. I had a follow there and the tiniest of plucks. And they're just taking short. I'll drop it back out amongst them. Maybe try speeding my retrieve up a touch. See if I can just induce one to grab it. I've lost count of the follows I've had now, and flashes and little plucks and swirls at my fly. I can see a couple of the other anglers have given up as well and gone back to the car for a cup of coffee and a sandwich, and I think that's increasingly looking like a good idea. It's been lovely to finally get out and do another podcast, and lost count of how many fish followed and plucked, and had 3 or 4 fish on, but they just won't commit today, and this sunshine and lack of wind has really killed it now. So I think that's me done. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to be back out on the water and getting some more podcasts out to you. I'll be up on the salmon on the D next week, be recording the podcast on there, and that will be out in April time. So thank you so much for listening. As ever, to buy any of our flies, please visit us at shop.peaksflyfishing.com, or for more information about our fly fishing lessons, it's www.peaksflyfishing.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, bye bye.